Have you ever eaten a fruit without knowing it was quietly helping to regenerate joint cartilage and ease your knee pain? Welcome back to part 2 of the journey to naturally restore your body's collagen. In part 1, we explored 4 familiar fruits: kiwi, pineapple, papaya, and guava. Simple foods with powerful effects on boosting collagen production, reducing inflammation, and improving joint flexibility. But that was only half the story. In this part, I'll introduce the remaining 4 fruits, and I'm pretty sure a few of them will surprise you, not just because of how effective they are, but because they may have already been sitting in your kitchen. Did you know that one tiny fruit on this list has been clinically proven to increase skin collagen density by up to 24% and reduce knee pain by more than 40%, simply by eating it regularly? If you're middle-aged or older and you've noticed things like a popping or cracking sound in your knees when you stand up, slight swelling around your ankles in the afternoon, or your joints stiffening up after just a few minutes of walking, then this video is definitely for you. Because when your collagen levels drop, it's not just about aging, it's about the breakdown of the structure that supports your entire joint system. And trust me, the food you eat every day can either be part of the solution or part of the problem. Over the next few minutes, I'll walk you through several fruits that are science-backed, easy to find, easy to use, affordable, and that can help your joints recover, reduce pain, and bring back that light, flexible feeling in your legs in just a few days. So, are you ready for the next step? Let's dive into fruit 5, a small berry that can help fight collagen breakdown, support blood circulation, and ease knee pain after walking. Section 5. Black raspberries. Black raspberries are often overlooked due to their small size and, at times, higher price compared to other fruits. But few people realize that they are among the most powerful foods for protecting cartilage and restoring collagen in people over 50. What makes black raspberries stand out the most is their extremely high level of anthocyanins, a natural pigment responsible for their deep purple color. This isn't just a powerful antioxidant. It's also the key compound that slows down collagen breakdown, which commonly occurs with aging, especially in people with chronic arthritis, knee pain, or swelling around the ankles. When collagen in the joints breaks down, the cushioning between the bones thins out, leading to friction and inflammation. The anthocyanins in black raspberries act as a shield, inhibiting the enzymes that destroy collagen and reducing oxidative stress, a major cause of chronic inflammation and joint swelling. In addition, black raspberries also contain manganese, essential for activating the enzymes that produce collagen fibers and for maintaining the strength of ligaments, tendons, and cartilage. Soluble fiber helps improve digestion, which boosts the absorption of vitamin C and protein, 2 key building blocks of collagen. Polyphenols, a group of anti-inflammatory compounds that improve blood circulation in the legs, which is especially important for older adults who are less physically active. A study published in the journal Nutrients found that older adults who consumed black raspberries daily for 6 weeks showed significant reductions in inflammation markers and improved joint flexibility, particularly in the knees and ankles, which are often stiff in the morning. Moreover, the polyphenols in black raspberries help keep capillaries healthy, allowing blood to deliver nutrients more effectively to damaged joint areas. This becomes increasingly important for people over 60, as blood circulation to the legs and knees typically weakens with age. Black raspberries are also quite versatile in how you can use them. The best time to eat them is in the morning, when the digestive system is most efficient at absorbing vitamins and antioxidants. You can mix them with plain yogurt, add them to smoothies, or enjoy them as a light dessert. If fresh berries aren't available, unsweetened frozen ones are a good alternative. However, canned versions in syrup should be avoided, as they can counteract the benefits. If your knees tend to swell at the end of the day, your ankles go numb after walking, or your joints feel stiff every morning, Just a small serving of black raspberries each day can make a noticeable difference in a few weeks. This is a natural way to fight inflammation, protect collagen, and keep your joints flexible and pain-free, without the need for pills or supplements. Section 6. Blueberries. Blueberries, though often known as a superfood for boosting memory, actually have a powerful effect when it comes to protecting joints, strengthening cartilage connections, and supporting collagen repair. This becomes especially important for people over 50, when joints begin to creak, ache, or swell slightly after physical activity. The standout benefit of blueberries comes from a group of compounds called flavonoids, specifically anthocyanins, the same found in black raspberries, but with a higher level of biological activity. The anthocyanins in blueberries bind directly to inflamed connective tissues, reducing oxidative responses that damage cartilage, while also protecting existing collagen from further breakdown. A study published in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics showed that older adults who consumed blueberries daily for 2 weeks experienced a 38% improvement in joint mobility and reduced swelling in the lower body, especially in the knees and ankles, which are most vulnerable during prolonged standing or frequent walking. Another plus, blueberries help increase blood flow to joint areas. This improved circulation makes it easier for essential nutrients like vitamin C, lysine, and proline, all building blocks of collagen, to reach the joint tissues more effectively. This is especially critical for older adults with poor peripheral circulation. In addition to anthocyanins, blueberries also contain a significant amount of vitamin C, activates enzymes that synthesize collagen in cartilage and ligaments. Manganese helps stabilize connective tissue structure and maintain joint durability. Natural fiber regulates blood sugar, which indirectly reduces chronic inflammation. It may sound minor, but blueberries are also beneficial for people with prediabetes or insulin resistance, because stabilizing blood sugar levels helps reduce systemic inflammation, which in turn eases stress on joints and cartilage already weakened by age. The best way to eat blueberries is fresh in the morning, paired with oatmeal, chia seeds, or a no-sugar-added smoothie. Wild blueberries contain twice the antioxidants compared to cultivated ones, but if those aren't available, unsweetened frozen blueberries are a solid alternative. Avoid products with added sugars or preservatives. If you've noticed your feet tend to swell slightly after a day of activity, or your knees creak and hurt when standing up, adding blueberries to your daily diet is a simple yet effective way to reinforce the collagen you still have and slow down further joint degeneration. Section 7. Strawberries. Strawberries are a familiar, easy-to-find, easy-to-eat fruit. But what most people don't know is that they're also a powerful natural weapon against collagen breakdown in the joints. The first standout feature of strawberries is their exceptionally high vitamin C content. Just 1 cup of strawberries provides over 100% of your daily vitamin C needs, a key nutrient for producing new collagen. Without enough vitamin C, your body can't properly form complete collagen fibers. That leads to weaker cartilage, looser joints, and higher risk of inflammation. Beyond vitamin C, strawberries contain a special compound called ellagic acid, a potent antioxidant that helps block enzymes that break down collagen during inflammation. When your knees, ankles, or hips swell after physical activity, enzymes like collagenase and elastase are the ones eating away at the joint's protective cushion. Ellagic acid acts like a barrier, protecting collagen from further destruction and helping cartilage tissue recover. A clinical study published in the Journal of Medicinal Food found that people with knee arthritis who ate strawberries daily for 2 weeks experienced a 37% reduction in inflammation markers and significant improvement in joint pain and flexibility. Strawberries also help regulate blood sugar and reduce overall oxidative stress, 2 silent drivers of chronic inflammation in older adults. When free radicals are kept in check, collagen lasts longer, and cartilage cells can function more effectively. Strawberries also contain manganese, which supports the enzymes that build collagen fibers, just like blueberries and black raspberries. When you combine these berries in your diet, your joints get support from multiple angles: anti-inflammatory action, nourishment, and protection for your cartilage. The best way to use strawberries is to eat them fresh and whole. The red flesh is rich in vitamins and polyphenols, while the green tops also contain antioxidants. So if you're making a smoothie, you can blend the whole fruit, tops and all. Avoid processed products like strawberry jam, syrup, or canned strawberries with added sugar. Refined sugar can wipe out the fruit's anti-inflammatory benefits. If you often notice clicking in your joints, mild swelling in your legs after shopping or climbing stairs, or you just want to protect the collagen you still have, then a cup of strawberries a day is a simple, effective, long-term solution. Section 8. Amla, Indian gooseberry. Amla, also known as Indian gooseberry, is a fruit you may have never heard of, but it's actually the most powerful one on this list when it comes to restoring collagen and relieving joint pain and swelling. The first standout feature of Amla is its incredibly high natural vitamin C content, 10 to 20 times more than citrus fruits. But more importantly, the vitamin C in Amla is highly stable and easily absorbed, thanks to natural polyphenols like gallic acid and quercetin. This means Amla not only helps your body generate new collagen, but also protects existing collagen fibers from oxidation and damage. A study conducted in India and published in the journal Clinical Interventions in Aging found that older adults who took Amla extract daily for 12 weeks experienced a 42% reduction in knee joint pain and swelling, a 24% increase in collagen density and skin elasticity, confirmed through tissue biopsy. In addition, Amla stimulates fibroblast cells, the cells responsible for producing collagen in tendons, cartilage, and skin, which speeds up the repair of tissue damaged by inflammation, aging, or long-term mechanical stress, such as standing for hours or climbing stairs. Amla's benefits go beyond joint health. It also improves blood circulation in the lower limbs, reducing heaviness and numbness in the legs after standing for long periods or upon waking. It helps regulate blood sugar levels and reduces free radicals around the joints, a critical factor for older adults at risk of chronic systemic inflammation. The best way to consume Amla is in powder or pure juice form. If you're using the powder, mix 1 teaspoon with warm water and a few drops of lemon juice in the morning. If you're using the fresh fruit, which is quite sour and tough to eat raw, slice it thinly and soak it overnight with a pinch of salt to mellow the flavor. Many middle-aged users report noticeable changes just a few days after starting Amla. Less morning stiffness, reduced ankle swelling, and smoother movement when getting up or down. Amla doesn't just ease the symptoms, it targets the root cause, collagen loss with age. If you're going to pick just one fruit to kickstart your journey to better joint and collagen health, Amla deserves to be at the top of your list. So you've just gone through the list of 8 fruits with me, fruits that can naturally help restore collagen and ease joint pain. No medications, no high costs, just a small change in your diet, and you can give your body the tools it needs to repair the wear and tear that builds up over the years. If you've ever thought that knee pain, swollen legs, or stiff joints in the morning are just normal signs of aging, then I hope that after watching these 2 parts of the video, you now realize there are simple but effective ways to improve those issues, starting with the food you eat. Whether you go for kiwi, pineapple, blueberries, or Amla, the key is consistency. Collagen doesn't regenerate overnight, but if you give your body the right building blocks, bit by bit, every day, then in just a few weeks, you might start to notice a difference when walking, standing up, or simply not feeling stiff when you wake up. If you found this content helpful, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos. Turn on notifications so each week You'll get more practical knowledge and real-world solutions for staying healthy after 50. Feel free to leave a comment below and share which fruits you've tried, or tell us about the changes you've noticed. I read every single message and do my best to reply as much as I can. Your experience might even help someone else find the right path for themselves. And if you have friends or family dealing with joint pain, swelling, or reduced mobility, send this video their way. Sometimes, all it takes is the right piece of information at the right time to change someone's entire recovery journey. Thank you for staying with me until the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one, with more practical, science-based, easy-to-apply topics to help you maintain your health and quality of life after 50.